I'm John Buchanan. Now what we're going to do this week is to look at drum punch, a phrase that comes up an awful lot for people who are working with beats, programming, mixing. This idea that what we can do is to add extra, well, there's no other word for it, punch to our drums. What does the word punch mean? Well, I don't want to suddenly get into like a mixed martial arts kind of a thing, but obviously punch means kind of smack. It's the bit that provides us with energy and impact and all that goodness. And what we can actually do when we're mixing is to decide how much of that we want to be a feature of our drum mixes. That's a little bit of an intro for you. Let's have a listen to the track and then we'll get into drum punch itself. Okay, so let's get down to the fundamentals of understanding the way that a drum sound behaves and also how compressors behave. And what we're going to do is to combine our knowledge of the two to understand how we can either enhance or lessen the effect of the impact of a drum. So drums are all about transients. Transients are the loud bit at the beginning of the attack of a sound. And if you think about it, a drum sound, whether it's a kick or a snare or any other sound within the drum world, is exactly that. The loudest bit of energy comes right at the beginning, and then fairly rapidly that sound fades out. And at no stage does it sustain, at no stage does it get louder. It's a sound that attacks and decays and stops. Okay, so as a kind of waveform, we can think about drums a lot like this. So if I just zoom in on this particular track for a moment, you can see what I mean by a transient. Here is, as it turns out, a kind of finger snap. And because the way that the finger snap has been recorded is that there are kind of two of them, we're getting a double transient. But what we're seeing is the impact of the note happening, and then we're seeing the fact that it then kind of fades out. This is also a drum sound where what we've got is a sound which impacts and then goes. And all the way through the waveforms for drums, you become very familiar with this kind of a shape where all of the energy happens immediately. So that's understanding the concept of a transient and what that word means. And then what we do is to say, okay, well, what do compressors do? What compressors do is to limit the dynamic range of a sound. So what we've got is the loud bit, and in the case of a drum, that is the transient. And then what we've got is the quiet bit, the silence that comes after the decay phase. So what we've effectively got is this kind of dynamic range which plays out unbelievably quickly from very loud to very quiet. So what compressors do is they set a threshold point somewhere in the dynamic range of a sound and say above this point, what I'm going to do is to reduce the volume. So if we want to lessen the effect of a transient, what we can do is to compress a sound quite hard, but also make sure that that compressor is attacking very quickly. And what that means is that the punch, the impact, the transient is squashed very quickly. If we increase the attack time, then that punch, that impact comes through the mix. We have a chance to hear it before the compressor goes to work on the next bit of the sound. And what we're going to do now is to explore the difference between the two versions of that. So what I'm going to do is to put all of the drums into a track stack. So I'm leaving out the little sequency thing at the top and the pad sound and the bass line, which is at the bottom. So anything on the screen that's actually blue is going to be drums. And what I'm going to do is to put it into a track stack, which I'm going to call drums. Felt dramatic, didn't it? So now suddenly everything that's happening here is drums, and what I'm going to do is to return this to its normal size so that it doesn't suddenly get an inflated sense of its own importance. It is, after all, just a finger snap. Right, what we're going to do is to put on cycle mode. Here are the same drums, no processing on them, but by themselves they sound like this. So a few things combining, I said that in a strange way, combining to come together to form our drum part, with the most conventional elements, the kick and snare, down here at the bottom. Because they're conventional, sort of feels like they should be at the top. Don't know why, but I'm going to put them there. And what I am going to do is to make sure that, just so we're really clear that everything is drums, these can all be the same shade of blue. And now we really are in drum world. Okay, to this collection of sounds, I'm going to add Logic's compressor. And as we know, because we've seen the compressor many, many times, there are a number of different algorithms here from which I can choose. And I'm deliberately going to choose something which has got the potential for an incredibly fast attack time, which is the Studio FET model, sort of based on the 1176 kind of a design. Okay, as always, what I'm going to do to make things fair, to make it really easy to hear the difference between the processed and the unprocessed sound, is I'm going to turn off automatic gain compensation. And what I'm also going to do is to turn off automatic release. I want to be in control. In fact, really, this whole episode is about being in control of the attack and the release times. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to just make sure that we're compressing enough of the signal that we're really going to hear the difference between the compressed and the uncompressed signal. The two ways that I'm going to do that are by dropping the threshold points, and more of the drum mix is included in the way that the compressor is going to behave. And what I'm going to do is to increase the ratio to do the same thing. What this is going to do is to make sure that the compressor is working a bit harder so that we can really hear it. Let's take that up to 5:1. I'm going to just check those settings now by listening to it. That feels like an appropriate thing to do, bearing in mind we're making music. Let's not do it without actually listening to that music. Now, as we can see and hear very clearly, proof once again that what compressors do is to make sounds quieter. Makes sense. We're setting a threshold point, and above that point, we are bringing down the loudest parts of the signal. Therefore, by default, without automatic gain compensation, the signal is going to be quieter. So what I am going to do is to turn it up a little bit to make up for some of the gain that we've lost. Now, as it turns out, this little needle is showing me that we're losing up to 10 dB of volume. So if I really wanted to get back to where we were, I'd go up to 10-ish. I think 7 will be plenty. Okay, now we can already hear the effect of this compressor, which is a good thing. But really, so much mixing is about context. So what I'm going to do now is to come out of solo mode, press play all over again, and this time I'm going to punch in the compressor halfway through. So at bar 13, I'm going to turn it on. Until then, uncompressed. From that point onwards, compressed. Note that so far we haven't done anything to attack and release. We're getting there, I promise. So the first thing we're going to do is to answer the question that always comes up around compression. If we're losing up to 10 dB of volume when we've only put back in 7, why on earth does it sound louder than it did before? For those of you who have been part of this channel for a long time, I now give you permission to answer the question. I'll wait. You're right. It's all to do with average volume listening levels. So we tend to think that the way that our ear hears sounds is loud or quiet, and the loud bits are the thing that provide volume in their own right. We refer to that as kind of peak listening levels, or peaks within our sort of listening experiences. But actually our ear is drawn to loud average volume, and because compressors narrow the dynamic range and then turn the whole of that up by making the quieter bits louder, our ear is drawn to the fact that the overall impression is that it is louder than it used to be. There you go. And you had that already, didn't you? Now, as I said, this episode is about drum punch. What do I mean by that? Well, to demonstrate that point, I'm going to leave the compressor on, but what I'm going to do halfway through this time is to take an attack time of 50 milliseconds down to 0. What we're going to do is to start in a place, as I say, where the attack time is at 50, I'm going to take it down to 0, and at the end, we'll talk about what on earth just happened. If we were a different type of YouTube channel, this would be the kind of moment. But we're not. We're not that channel. So don't make that the thumbnail, Will. Don't do it. Will he? Only the future will tell. Okay, so what did just happen? Okay, well, let's take what we know about transients and let's take what we know about compressors and let's add that up and make it equal drum punch. So if I take the attack time down to 0, the loudest transient moment is instantly compressed. Straight away. So all of the energy that exists within a drum sound at the beginning, which by the way is most of it, instantly has its dynamic range squeezed. So all of that impact is pulled downwards, super compressed, and as a result what we get is this kind of amazingly sort of squashed thing, and all of the punch disappears because the impact of those transients is deliberately limited. We're going to listen again. We're going to start the other way around. And what I'm going to do is to slowly introduce some attack time. And suddenly those drums will punch. Now, of course, the other thing that's happening is the overall drum mix is getting louder. Again, why? Well, hopefully you realise why. The loudest bits of the drums are in those impactful transient moments, and now they're not really being compressed. The compressor is only responding after they have happened. So we get the full volume of those punchy moments without the compressor arriving. There comes a moment where the compressor starts working its magic, but it's after those impacts. And as a result of that, the volume is louder than when we simply drop attack time. So what I see people doing a lot when they're working with compression is that they set the overall makeup gain amount and they leave it at whatever setting they've gone for without factoring in how the attack time is going to affect overall volume. It's going to be really important that as you're adjusting attack time, you're also compensating for volume. The ear is drawn to loud volume. We like loud things. So what's going to happen is that we're going to introduce attack, the drums are going to get louder, we're going to think that's better. Well, the only way to really tell is that as you introduce more attack time or a longer attack time, you turn down the overall effect of the drums, and that's the only like-for-like way of being able to do that. Okay, so where does release figure in the drum punch argument? Almost sounds like a sort of PhD question. Well, think about it. What release does is to do exactly what attack does, but in reverse. So the drum happens. The attack time determines how quickly the compressor responds to that transient. And the release time says, okay, well, actually, you know what? The sound is now dropped underneath the threshold point, and as a result, I don't need to be compressing anymore, and therefore I can recover. So again, it sort of stands to reason that if we wanted super punch, what we might choose would be a slower attack time, but a faster release time. In other words, quick recovery from compression, but not super fast attacking at the beginning of compression. Let's experiment with that next. And there's the needle fully recovered. So right at the end, I've turned the release time up to 5 seconds. And of course, we lose all of that punch. Why? Because the sound never gets a chance to fully recover from its compressed state. It's trying to, and every time it tries to, another drum sound comes along and effectively there's my favorite word again, resets the release time. It never gets a chance to recover. So if we want really spiky, punchy response times, we want to be dropping the release time. But if what we want to do is to make sure that we don't absolutely just slam the drum mix so that all of those transients are squashed into oblivion, we need to make sure that the attack time is a little bit longer. Again, for those of you who've been watching for a little while, what are the right settings for drum punch? What are they? That's right. Again, it's so good that you're attending this class. There is no such thing as the right amount. What's the tempo of your track? What's the feel of it? What do you want the drums to sound like? How dramatic do you want the punch on those drums to be? Do you like the super squashed thing? All of these things are taste. What a compressor does is to make all of the tastes available from which you can choose. So what we've done within this episode is to explore another side to compression, particularly focusing on attack and release in the context of drum punch. A couple more things to say. If compression is something you're interested in and you want to be using it better within your mixes, go and check out Essentials Compression at learn.johnobcannonmusic. And at the same website, you can also find the Crafting Beats course. So if you want to make beats like this or better beats in all of your productions, go and have a look at that course too. My word, they pair well together. It would have been even better if I'd got that sentence right. Never mind, you know what I'm trying to say. Drum punch, it's good stuff.